Okay, thanks Paul, and thanks for everyone being here, and appreciate you lending us your eyes and ears over the next 45 minutes. I think we're going to generate a very informative and interesting discussion on mental health, which is an extreme priority that we need to put some attention on and shed some light on. So I appreciate you being here. It's something that impacts every one of us, not just some of us. I'm going to go through a few slides. I want to highlight the why we're here today, and then we'll do a bit of an intro. I'll allow Kevin and Steph to intro themselves, and then we'll dive into some questions, get a little background on why they're here and why they are good advocates for this discussion. Sound good? Awesome. So just to give you a sense of some why, some of the most recent literature on mental health, especially in sport, has come out following the pandemic, something we all experienced and all struggled through in our own ways. We're all on the other side of that now, fortunately. But what we're finding is between 40 and 48% of children and adolescents have experienced some sort of mental health challenge in the wake of the pandemic. Children and youth who have mental health issues are very unlikely to seek help. We're finding about 1 in 10 youth or adolescent is willing to actually seek help or knows how to actually seek help, where to go, where to turn. Okay? The influence and observation and personal connection that coaches have place them in a critical role. So we know that that relationship between the athlete and their coaches is critical. It's one of the most influential relationships in young athletes' lives. However, there's still this gap on seeking support. So we're trying to bridge that gap and ensuring that coaches know how to support this, but also how you seek support from your coach if needed. There's such a vital role in your life. So can we bridge that gap and make sure you've got the resources you need to get the support, and as well as coaches get the resources they need to support you as athletes. So overall, what we'd like to do in this 45 minutes is end the stigma around mental health, or at least continue to push this dialogue forward. So it's something we're all more aware of and better able to navigate. And we just wanted to turn your attention towards this portal. The Coaching Association of Canada has put together a mental health and sport resource hub. This is a very recent initiative that they've undertaken because of the need for this. It's free, it's online, there's tools, there's information, there's resources, there's guidelines. This is the most up-to-date research that is available today, and on top of that, it is continuing to be updated monthly with the most up-to-date literature. So this is a very important and very critical resource hub that anyone can utilize. Okay? And coaches highly encourage you to check this out and begin that journey on understanding how you can better support those you work with. So with that said, that's our why. We'll get into the discussion now. We'll start with a bit of an intro here with Steph. I know there was a brief intro on her success, but I'd like Steph to take over and give you an understanding of maybe why she's here and what you can expect from Steph. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. So as the intro said, I grew up playing soccer. That was my biggest passion, my biggest love. When I was really, really young, I played every sport possible. Hockey was my first sport. I wanted to be just like my older brother. I played basketball, volleyball, track and field, badminton, you name it, I did it. When I was 12 years old, I started to focus a lot more on soccer, and from there on, I just kind of stuck with it, and opportunities started to come my way. Throughout my career, I was really fortunate to be able to get a scholarship. I went down to the University of Connecticut, and then after that, I went on to play 14 years as a professional in Sweden, in France, and in the US. Throughout that, which is one of the main reasons I'm here today, I struggled a lot with my mental health throughout my entire journey, and it went, in many, many different forms. It came through in different ways, and I'm excited to share today some of the stories, some of the things I've learned, how I learned to be able to acknowledge it in my own experience, how I learned how to talk about it, and how I learned that mental health for me, as much as the stigma around it is a mental weakness, for me it turned out to be one of my greatest strengths towards the end of my career. And the struggles that I had been through, I was able to gain tools and resources that actually created a mental resilience in me, which allowed me to perform at my absolute best and bring home a gold medal for Canada 2 years ago in Tokyo.
Kevin, over to you.
Sure. Well, very similar background. Played a ton of sport growing up. Was able to excel in the sport of mogul skiing. And that sort of took me around Canada, introduced me to a lot of sport, took me around the United States. And then I struggled with mental health in the fact that an injury ended that career and made it impossible to sort of move through the peak of that. But found other joys in sport and sort of came back to some work around officiating that I had done young and had a talent for that. So that took me to several Paralympic Games, including Rio and Tokyo, and hope to go to 2024. But my role at viaSport here is to operationalize a lot of what happens around this grant. I'm the manager of sport development, and to put it simply, I try and make sport not suck for the province of British Columbia, and really try and motivate kids to get involved in sport, but make the system work for athletes, for coaches, for officials, and sort of improve the lifestyle of British Columbians and keep healthy, active lifestyles with more fans in the stands and more people on the field.
And I'm Alex Hodgins, as mentioned. I'm a mental performance coach for the Vancouver Canucks and the Vancouver Whitecaps. Prior to that, for 9 years, which is how I had the pleasure of meeting Steph, I worked with the Canadian women's national soccer team from 2013 right until the end of the Olympics in Tokyo. So I got to watch firsthand an athlete like Steph navigate this world, high performance, the stress that comes with it, and also the mental health challenges. And I also watched her rise and help lead a team to a gold medal in the first time in the country's history. So I've seen it firsthand. My role in mental performance really is on the front line of this topic. Like I'm faced with this, I work with athletes every day, and the shining light I'd like to highlight is that we need to understand it's a person who plays the sport, and we need to emphasize that as much as we possibly can. And if the person is doing well, we'll get more out of them in the sport. If the person isn't doing well, the sport often struggles as well, right? And it's this cyclical relationship. So I think that's going to shed a really interesting discussion here today, and I think we're going to get some really interesting points and experiences for you guys, and maybe you can draw a little bit on your own, and then we'll have a question period at the end. Okay? So start with just an easy one. We're talking about athletes. We're also talking about the relationship between coaches and athletes. So Steph, what role do you feel coaches have had in your life?
I think from when I first started playing sport, coaches were really some of the most impactful, I think, leaders and adults in my life outside of my family. I was really fortunate and lucky to grow up in a super supportive and loving family. But every time I went to sport, or whatever sport it was, those coaches were the people that I looked up to, the people that I entrusted, the people that created that environment for me to go to sport and have fun and to enjoy those experiences. And for me, I've had so many different kinds of coaches. I look back to when I was young, the different types of coaches and leaders that I was around. And for me, the environments that I really thrived in was when I had coaches who created that environment where I felt safe to fail, safe to explore myself in new ways, where I knew that it was okay to make mistakes because I was going to grow from them, and mistakes weren't going to be punished or hold me back. And so I think for me, seeing coaches throughout my development, like they were really the people that I entrusted in my growth as an athlete.
And when you say, safe to make a mistake or fail forward, as we sometimes say, how did they actually create that? How did you get that feeling that it was okay to do that?
Yeah, I think it's in communications, it's in body language, it's in the structure around training. I think for me, going in and being able to have conversations with coaches where they were encouraging me to try new things, knowing that if I was trying something for the first time, I most likely was going to fail. And so I think the more that coaches were encouraging me to try something new, if I did fail, like talking to me and saying it's okay, let's try it again, like always encouraging me to do it over and over again, so that I could find that pattern and find that new way to succeed. I think also like coaches taking the time out later in my career, to watch video, to give me opportunities to express myself, to talk about, maybe mistakes that I had and how I can see that as a growing opportunity. I think for me, it's just taking the time out to make me feel valued, to have me feel seen, and to really hear my voice, that my voice was mattered.
Thank you. Can you share, obviously you had an extensive career, you said 14 years playing pro, obviously a university career as well. When you started out, when that sort of professional dream was becoming realized, was there an obstacle or a difficult situation you faced? And if so, how did you actually navigate that or overcome it?
Yeah, so growing up, I was an elite athlete and I was one of the best. So in my small town, I was, one of the best goalkeepers there. And then when I went to the provincial team, I was one of the best. When I went to college, I was one of the best. When I got into pro, I was playing on a team that was a lower end team, but I was the starting goalkeeper. For me, it was as soon as I broke my way into the women's national team, I spent the first 4.5 years as the third string goalkeeper. And for me, that played a heavy, heavy toll on me. I wasn't used to that type of not feeling like I mattered or that I was valued. For me, every time I would step on the field and I would work as hard as I could. I gave everything to that sport, and then to always get that feeling of not being chosen, of not being given that opportunity to play, that started to wear on me. It started to wear on my confidence. It started to wear on how I believed in myself, how I thought of myself, not only as a soccer player, but as a human being. Because then I thought, am I not a good teammate either? What am I doing on the field that's not good enough? Always trying to find all of these reasons. And I think that mental toll just became so heavy for me. And after 4.5 years on the senior women's national team as the third string goalkeeper, I ended up feeling this weight on me. I was emotional a lot. I really just felt like I was in this space where I was showing up to sport and I just wasn't happy. I wasn't enjoying it. I wasn't loving what I was doing. And so at that time, I didn't really have any role models around me. I didn't know, I had never heard anyone talk about mental health, so I didn't know what I was going through, but I knew something didn't feel right. I knew something didn't feel right about what I was going through. And so I made the decision at the time to step away from the national team. I continued to play professionally because I had so much fun and joy there. But it was in the national team environment that I just wasn't getting that confidence, and I wasn't feeling happy and joyous and proud of myself, really. And so I stepped away from the national team at the time, not knowing, that I was taking what now we would call it a mental health leave. I was just making the decision because I wasn't happy, I wasn't enjoying it. But looking back now and having more conversations around this and being able to put more words to it, I can confidently say that back then, at the time, I was going through a state of depression. And like I said, at the time, I didn't have words to really explain what I was going through. And so I think that for me was one of the first hurdles that I really had to overcome.
Thank you. I appreciate that honesty. And seeing some of this firsthand, you were as a third string, and then all of a sudden you were the starting goalkeeper for a very high-profile team in the country. And if you've been navigating issues on confidence, issues on where do I fit, and then all of a sudden you're supposed to lead the team, I'd imagine, even though it's the thing you wanted, that also probably poses challenges. Am I correct?
Yeah, I think it was, like you said, it was that drastic kind of shift. But I think what the biggest thing for me was when I stepped away and I was able to take that time to focus on what is it that makes me happy? What is it that brings me joy, not only in sport, but in life? How can I be the best version of myself every single day? When I came back into the environment, I had a whole new look on this. I knew that in order for me to be confident and happy, I had to find that from within. And in the past, I had tried to find that externally. So I tried to find it from a coach. I wanted my coach, I wanted to get that positive feedback from the coach of them saying how good I was, or, selecting me to play, or I wanted my teammates to be saying how good I was, how well I was doing. But I knew that I couldn't search from that externally anymore. If I wanted true confidence and true belief in myself, it had to come from within, and I had to build that from within myself, so that I didn't give that power to anybody else. So it was finding that way to empower myself and believe in myself no matter what. And so once I was able to then, when I came back into the environment after taking that time away, I think I just had that empowering feeling of, I believe in myself so much, and it doesn't matter what anybody says, I know what I want to achieve and I know what I can achieve. And having that belief, it just allowed me to take my career into a whole new level.
Nothing held you back after that, that's for sure. Kevin, you seem to have a pretty well-rounded approach with sport. You've been a high-level athlete, officiating, involved with coaches and coaching. Can you explain how you think coaches foster a culture of open communication, sort of create that trust and a supportive environment that might facilitate mental health?
Yeah, I think it's essential for coaches to be able to create this environment, especially for the modern lifestyle of an athlete, and really approaching it from the people-centered perspective and not just the outcomes. That a lot of coaches are driven through outcomes and not necessarily driven through what type of mental state their athletes who are performing are in. And really driving it back to dialogue and opening the dialogue and making sure that everybody feels safe in the environment is absolutely critical to coach success and athlete success. And that synergy is really what a lot of the messaging we're trying to drive through this program has been, is around how to build the language in the coach and build the language in the athlete so that you're speaking the same language and not different languages. And that's really essential in creating that space for trust to develop and then performance to thrive.
And how do you think you can create that language that's consistent from, player to coach and coach to player?
For sure. Well, it starts with education. It starts with wrestling with challenging problems. It starts with seeking resources. So the resource hub that we pointed to a little bit earlier, fantastic place to start the dialogue. Grab tools from there and work through them with your teams, work through them with your fellow athletes. This is how we sort of build resilience and build confidence in the things that we say and understand the meaning behind the things we say, and how that coach can then support that environment with a true knowledge base because they've done some research, read the literature, experimented a little bit, and got a bit of team cohesion built around that. So there's some trust in when I say this, it means this, and your team buys it.
So I'm not sure how many people have actually stood at the top of a mogul's ski course. I would never do it. I'm a fairly good skier, and I would never go down. There's bumps, there's huge jumps, it's terrifying. And then I've seen Steph stand on the field in front of 50,000 people, trying to win a bronze medal in Rio in front of a home Brazilian crowd, which was the most intimidating environment I've ever seen. And I don't know how she actually performed in that environment because I could barely sit and watch. So taking kind of those examples of what the sport reality is like for you, what do you learn staring down at a mogul hill when everything in your body is saying go the other way? What do you learn there that helps you perform in life? And Steph, same thing, in front of a crowd of 50,000 people, when you just want to hide, how do you go towards that? What do you learn that allows you to benefit in life from those moments?
Sure, that's a great question. I think there's a couple of things that come to my head, and the first thing that comes is preparation. Like both the mental preparation that you put in place to be able to succeed, feel confident in that space, but then all the technical and tactical things that you've developed over your life and putting those things together to stand there and perform is, I think, essential for every coach or athlete in the performance arena. In moguls, I'm by myself. It's not like a team sport. In some ways, like you're there by yourself with judges watching you, and there's a lot of pressure, and you don't want to let people down. But if you can really focus in and rely on all the training that you did on that specific hill or in many hills that you've conquered over time, that builds up a little bit of that resiliency in the gate so that you can go and perform. And same for me as an official on the court. Like when the whistle blows, all the eyes go on you, and that can be a little bit of a daunting moment in a Paralympic or World Championship arena. And that's it, again, relying on the tactics, the knowledge you have, the confidence you have, the relationships you've built around. You refereed these coaches for years. They know that you're going to make the right call. You shouldn't be so worried about what the outcome is. Again, always focus on the process. And I think process-oriented thinking leads to more positive mental outcomes.
I think for me, a lot of it was around learning to be in the present moment. And so for me, stepping on the field, like you said, in the bronze medal game, we were in Rio de Janeiro, and there's, like you said, 50,000 Brazilian fans. There was maybe 15 Canadian fans, our parents in the stands. And knowing you're going against the home team, I think for me, it was, of course, the confidence that is built that, you know what, nothing is going to happen in this game that I haven't seen before. I'm not stepping into a totally new sport or into a totally new environment that I've never seen this before. Of course, the fans were different, but for me, it was just when I step on that field, I know what I'm doing. I've played soccer for thousands of hours of my life, and I've played against so many different types of teams and individuals, and so I know that I have what it takes for whatever is going to come at me. And I think that confidence and that then at the same time, like just being able to be in the moment, I think that translates into so many parts of your life. The more that you can just be in the present moment, the less you're thinking about what happened 5 minutes, 10 minutes ago, 3 weeks ago, the more that you can just be here and now and be present in that moment. I think that helps you enjoy life a lot more, and it helps you be more present in conversations with people that you're in, and just be more confident in how you present yourself all the time.
So we're here obviously talking about mental health, mental performance, the stigma around that as well, and trying to raise a little bit of awareness to that. Can you guys maybe highlight how you approach difficult like currently in your life, not as athletes, but just currently how you approach difficult feelings and conversations in your life to sort of work through those, when you're having a down moment?
I think difficult conversations are difficult because of the nature of them. I think for me, it's always comes back to this thought of like, I'm going to be better from this. I spent so many years holding on to things. I spent so many years not talking about my feelings or not talking about the things I was struggling with. And for me, it just continued to weigh me down, and it came up in different parts of my life that I didn't expect it to come up. And so for me, as soon as I started talking about it, it was like this weight off my chest. And I know we've talked about it before that, especially in sport, when we talk about our struggles for so long, it's been seen as a weakness. So to come out and tell your coach, I'm not feeling so great today. For females to talk about when we're on our period and say, my stomach hurts today, I have cramps, or I just don't feel my best today. Like, for so long, we've seen that as a weakness, or we've seen that as, oh, well, you're not mentally strong, so I'm not going to play you today, or. But I think it's advocating for yourself and advocating for what's best for you. That's something that is going to empower you and give you so much strength because you're standing up for yourself. It's not about someone else telling you how you feel or what you should be doing. It's about you standing up for yourself and taking control of yourself. And I think the more that we can talk about these hard things, the more that we can feel empowered in ourselves.
Kevin?
Sure, yeah. For me, in my mental health journey, in work and parenting, in a lot of areas of my life, it's come down to like a lot of just naming the issue and like naming the problem, and really understanding what that name means. Like, are you frustrated? Are you sad? Are you angry? If you can name that to the person that you're having that conflict with, it really can help stabilize the situation and get you on the same page so that they understand that you're not frustrated. You actually are a bit triggered about something that's sad for you in your past, that you can connect to this moment, and they might not be aware of that. So by naming that, it gives you a lot of power in the conversation to say, like, now we have a level set and now we can move forward. Because until everybody's sort of understands the things that are coming into that mental health struggle, they don't really understand how you're going to unpack it all. So level setting, I think, and naming the problem has been really important in resourcing me. I know, just in my life as I'm a fairly new parent. So my wife and I see things slightly differently, and sometimes we have to have that conversation and name why we're frustrated, or something that I came across as a child or as an athlete or whatever, and how we're trying to advance our son into the world. That can lead to conflict, and coming out and really just saying, like, I feel frustrated today, and giving yourselves the space and the grace to kind of have those moments, and then come back together and have kind of dealt with that and parked it, and now you can have the logic conversation.
So to Kevin's point, if I put my psych hat on, we use the term name it to tame it, which is pretty straightforward, but sometimes when you do label that emotion, you label that, you put a statement on it saying, I am frustrated, I'm angry, I'm stressed. I'm stressed, of course, I'm preparing for something big. There's an exam coming up, plus I have practice, plus I have social life. I'm stressed out right now, but just that simple act of being willing to recognize that and name it, as Kevin highlighted, it can kind of remove it from the emotional part of your brain and bring that up into the logical part, and you can start to work through it. If you try to suffocate that, it tends to come up in different ways, tends to show itself in other ways. And I think to Steph's point, one of a former teammate that Steph played with, I worked with for a long time, she had this great analogy of a beach ball. And I'm sure many of us, probably all of us, have played with a beach ball and maybe even tried to shove one underwater. And when you try to shove a beach ball underwater, what's the first thing that happens when you let go? Comes back up. If you're really unlucky, it's going to smack you right in the face. And that's a lot of times what happens when we try to suffocate some of these emotions or these feelings or these anxieties that we might be experiencing, is it's going to come back. It might not come back right away, but it's going to come back harder, faster. Sometimes it's going to smack you in the face. So if we shift a little bit to the coaching side, there's obviously a lot of great experience between the two of you. Why do you think it's so valuable right now? Like, the discussion is there, it's happening more often, where it's becoming more aware in social media and just athletes coming out and speaking about this. But why do you think it's so important for coaches to dive in and educate themselves and sport leaders and just to keep up to date with what's happening and the resources available? Kevin, why don't you kick that off?
Sure. I think, part of that comes back to just the need to develop the whole person, and why coaching is now more focused than ever on people first, athlete-centered performances, and really not focusing on those outcomes. And I know I said that a little bit before, but I really do mean it when I say, like, outcomes will come out of good process and will come out of good people who are, like, challenging themselves and feeling safe in that space to make mistakes. And coaches from generations past didn't necessarily open the doors to those opportunities to think about how people who are empowered and feel self-motivated, that intrinsic motivation that you spoke to, Steph, that's sort of like what I think leads to sort of successful outcomes now. And in order to do that, coaches need to deep dive into, like, what makes their athletes tick, the why behind the motivations they're trying to put out there, and really try and resource themselves, having conversations. More and more people are talking about where mental health challenges have led to catastrophes, and people have had loss because of mental health, and that makes people get more invested, which is important. And you can, like, one of the resource hub pieces is this Buddy Check for Jesse tool. It's really a way for coaches to use common signals like green tape on your hockey stick to say, like, I'm aware of mental health and I can be a support ally for you. And coaches can have that conversation, and it gives you tools and resources to take to your practice and have the conversation so that you feel equipped with knowledge and not just, like, coming from the gut. So, and that's really, you're seeing more and more coaches be motivated by that sort of intrinsic tool to empower the people around them and create successful humans out in the world later.
Steph, anything to add?
Yeah, I think for me, like, where we're at now, it's no longer acceptable for coaches to see all athletes as the same. And so I think the more that coaches can educate and understand mental health from an individualistic point of view, the more that they are able to help every athlete and see every athlete as their own unique human in their own unique journey. And so I think, like, especially in team environments, being able to individualize it and being able to check in on each athlete in a different way and find ways, this athlete may want to be communicated with in a different way than this athlete, and that'll be completely different than this athlete over here. And so being able to have that understanding and knowledge and confidence to be able to have those conversations in different ways to get the best out of every athlete in their own unique way.
So, in terms of suggestions for somebody struggling, there might be some people in this room right now struggling. What would you recommend to an athlete, Steph, that might be struggling with mental health? And then maybe Kevin, if you can take the coach's spin as well, because coaches have their own stressors, their own anxieties, and they deal with this as well. So maybe Steph focus on the athlete and Kevin from the coaching perspective.
Yeah, I think firstly, like, have a think about who the people in your circle that you trust are. Is it your family? Is it a sibling? Is it a cousin? Is it one of your teachers? Is it your friends? Who is that one person that you really trust and that you feel that you can have that conversation with? And I think that's, like, a big one, is, like, finding out who that support system is, because it's going to be different for a lot of different people. I think secondly, for me, a big tool was just to like have a continual kind of monitor on myself. So every morning, like taking that little bit of time just to check in with yourself, like how am I feeling today? Am I feeling like a little bit sad? Am I feeling super high energy today? Am I feeling, oh, I'm a little bit tired today, like I wonder why? Just checking in with yourself every day and kind of asking yourself that question. I think it goes a long way to kind of start to understand yourself and understand, because some of us may operate on kind of like a lower level, and so then if you're checking in every day and you're always a little bit tired, but then all of a sudden one day it's like, oh, I'm feeling a lot more tired, or I'm a little bit lower than I typically am. I think just starting to understand those patterns in yourself, and for some of us, I operate on a quite high level of anxiety on most days, and so it doesn't take much to like kind of trigger me to be over the top in a sense. And so for me, like checking in and being like, I'm a little extra anxious today, I'm a little overwhelmed, that's going to help me go into my day and be able to be like, you know what, I'm a little extra anxious this morning, I'm not going to have coffee today because I know that's going to put me over the top. So just being able to have a little bit more of an understanding of what your baseline is, and then knowing who your support system is that you feel comfortable talking to. And I think, yeah, the more that we can go towards those conversations and having those trusted individuals in our lives, I think the more that we can get things off of our chest and talk about it.
Yeah, and from the coach context, I think one of the things that's sort of emerging in quality coaching is the mental health check-in at the beginning and the end of your practices, and really building it into sort of the strategy around your practice, and that's normalizing the condition of that, and just sort of going around the room and saying, like, you know, checking in on a rating scale with your team. It can be as easy as that, and then checking out with your team on a rating scale and making it fun, but also like informing them that, like, I am considerate of your mental health and I am considerate of the process here. And so that's one way to do it. The other way is to have these conversations focused at the beginning of the year, or find moments in the year where you're going to reflect days that celebrate mental health and the awareness around it, and really just calling that out and saying it at practice that we're going to celebrate this today because we care about mental health in our team environment or our individual sport environment. And how you connect, again, like those connections with other coaches is really important. I know some coaching groups are starting communities of practice around supporting one another in the U sport system. So UBC coaches and things like that, they have a community of practice just to talk about the coach inter-athlete relationship, and that's a way to do it if you're just trying to resource yourself from like you said, peers perspective. Like a peer-to-peer mentorship is often super important, but the more voices you can bring into the table can often contribute to quality mental health, because you can say, I'm frustrated about this life thing, and like, have you been frustrated about this life thing and brought it into your practice environment? That was a mistake, but how can we rectify this mistake? Or things like that, or tools and resources is important.
Thank you. So I think I'll maybe just have two more questions. I want to end with a little bit of like a how-to maybe for everyone in this room, and I'm sure you both have some great individual strategies, and I can share some as well. But one other question I'm curious, maybe Steph, and again, I worked with Steph, and I didn't even, for maybe the first 3 or 4 years working with her, I didn't really realize that some of these issues existed. You never saw, and I think this is really important, you never saw an indication that anything was wrong. You know, you were stressed, no doubt, because you were preparing for big moments, but there was never an indication that anything was wrong. Sometimes you looked a little bit quieter or whatever. So I'm really curious, how can coaches or friends or peers or teammates, what sort of things can they look out for when it's not so obvious, right? It's internal, so what are we looking out for?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is a lot of the time mental health is something that we can't see. It's not like a physical injury where if someone, rolls their ankle or tears something in their knee or breaks an arm, we can all see it. We can see it with our own eyes. You can see it from across the room. But mental health is a lot harder to see. And so I think that is the biggest challenge with it. And I think it's the same as an individual. It's a lot easier for me to wake up in the morning and feel, oh, my knee's a little bit stiff today, or, ooh, my quad's a bit sore from training yesterday, or, oh, I got whiplash when I fell yesterday. Like, it's a lot easier to recognize and understand the physical pain that we feel, but being able to recognize and understand the mental, I think so often we just kind of put it to the side and we don't really think about it. And if it is there, we hide it because we think that it's weakness or we think that we're not strong enough. And so for me, I know that a lot of the time that was it. I didn't think that it was something that I needed to talk about. I didn't think that it was something I had to share with coaches, or because I just thought, well, I have to suck it up and get back on the field, or I have to, if I'm tough, I can push through this. And so I think it's like those conversations that I told myself for so long. But then at the same time, once I started to kind of acknowledge it and understand it, for me, I was always quite a private person, and so I think I had my close circle and support group that I really entrusted in and that I spoke with and that I opened up to, and I really relied on them to kind of be that support before I was confident in talking more openly and publicly about it.
And one of the things I think is important to recognize, especially with your friends, your peers, or coaches, those that you've worked with for a long time, you recognize patterns, etc. And body language really screams. You know, it is an internal hidden challenge, but body language screams. So, you know, try to pay attention to some of those signals and symbols that are given off from the way that athletes show up and present themselves, especially if this is something that's continued over time across a few days or weeks. I just want to end again on a bit of a lighter note, and we have, you know, an example of somebody who's navigated this at the highest level and now in management in a prestigious sport organization here in Vancouver. What are just those non-negotiables, like the things that I just do, and if I do these things consistently, like I stay a little bit ahead of this. It's a constant challenge, but what are the things that you do, and I'm curious, Kevin, as well, like what are the things you guys do in life just to promote well-being and, yeah, try to just stay a little bit ahead?
I think for me, it's the daily check-ins for sure. Checking in with myself every single day, having that internal conversation. How am I feeling today? What are my levels at? And then I think along with that, a couple years back, I got into yoga and meditation. And so that is something that has kind of continued in my life and continued to be a really powerful tool and resource. For me, it helped me a lot as an athlete because being able to meditate, it allowed me to control my thoughts, to control the energy that I was expending on sport, and it allowed me to just be able to breathe through really challenging moments. So the tool of my breath and the control of my breath, that was something that no matter where I'm at in life, I can always come back to my breath. Like, no matter what's happening around me, that's something that's always in my control and something that's super simple for me to come back to. And so always, yeah, coming back to checking in with myself, and then yoga and meditation to keep a good level of, yeah, just control of my breath, control of my thoughts, and just that really like present moment thinking.
Yeah, for me, strategies, I'm a big list maker. I make a lot of lists so that I know sort of what's going to happen, and that helps regulate some of the anxiety I might have in a day, so that I can really check back with that list and have it be my grounding point to say, like, am I moving this along? But not in a list way that's like anxiety provoking, that if I don't check this list off, it's terrible. It's more of a, yeah, these are goals and I'm accomplishing them, and as they get checked off, I feel like a sense of serenity or control over those items. And then taking a little bit of time for myself every day. It's something that's hard to negotiate sometimes when you're managing kids, life, sport, and all that kind of stuff. But taking, even if it can only fit in like a 15-minute run versus like a 30-minute run, like the catharsis I get out of just like doing something that's just like metronomic like that is just really, really important for me and my mental well-being. And I notice the difference when I haven't taken that time to just like take a pause and rest my brain. So that's been a real important resource for me, is finding a fitness tool that will sort of calm me down.
Yeah. Thank you. There was maybe 4 or 5 years ago, we were at a resort in Spain, and Steph's been a big meditator for a long time and is a very good teammate as well, and brought a lot of teammates along, and there was like this rock formation on this beautiful resort. I don't know if you remember this. And so I go out for a run with our strength and conditioning coach, and he's, you know, very fit, big jump, but he's a terrible runner. His cardio is horrible, and he sounds like this animal that's chasing you. And actually it was really motivating for me because I felt like I was getting chased by like this monster I had to get away. Anyways, all the girls, there's about 7 of them out on these rocks meditating in the morning. It's beautiful, the sky's unbelievable, like perfect, serene spot. And we don't know they're there, and we round this corner, and all you hear is this like, and and just completely disrupts this whole like peaceful, serene moment. So I don't know if I ever apologized for bringing them by, but I think that the point I'm trying to make with that as well is, you know, bringing people along with you. Like there's something you found value and people saw you doing it, and I think it sort of caught on, and it was a bit of that snowball effect with teammates as well. And it was really amazing to see 10, 11 people out in the morning really early. Like you guys were out at 6 in the morning, 7 in the morning, just taking a moment, getting ahead of the day. That sort of wraps up the questions that I've got for these two. But we do have, I think, about 15 minutes or so for the crowd. If anyone wants to fire away with any questions, we'd love to have them and answer anything that's on your mind.
Was there any time you felt like you didn't fit in? And if so, how did you overcome that?
So I think the question was was there ever a time you didn't feel like you fit in? And then I didn't catch the second part there.
Sorry? How did you overcome?
How did you overcome that? When you didn't feel like you fit in?
I have two kind of instances that come to mind. The first one that comes to mind was in 2018. Well, it was actually the end of 2017. I was in a professional team in Washington, and it was a really negative environment for me. So I chose to break my contract and leave my club. And then there was some challenges in the off season with my club not releasing me, and I was not able to go play for another club. So I decided to try out for a men's team. And so I moved back to Canada because there was no women's professional opportunities in Canada at the time. So I moved back to Canada and I went and tried out for a men's team in Calgary. And I think the first day I walked in, noticeably, of course, I'm a different gender, and so walking into that room, I felt very different. I felt very out of place. I felt a little bit nervous, but I think for me, what I was really fortunate and lucky with is that the coach was extremely supportive. He was the one that said, come on in, I'm not gonna judge you based on your gender, I'm gonna judge you based on your ability to play. And so I think having that support, I was then able to have that confidence in myself and be able to step into the environment and not see myself as any different from them, but just to be able to see myself as an athlete. And yeah, I mean, moving forward, I ended up earning a contract and for that team. Unfortunately, the league said no because I was a girl, but I think just being able to go in and prove myself that I could compete with the boys, even though, visually I looked different, once I stepped on the field, I was really able to show that I was one of them. That's the first time. And then I think the second time, I would just go back to when I was the backup goalkeeper with the national team for many, many years. I think the story I started to tell myself was that I wasn't good enough, and that everybody was so much better than me. And so I think when I was able to step away and kind of empower myself with making a choice that was the best for me, learning to build that confidence from within and not allowing that external, those external factors dive into and dictate what I thought about myself. I think that's the biggest thing. A lot of the time when we feel we don't fit in, it's not necessarily that we don't fit in. It's like these things that we're picking up on outside of us. And so I think it's about coming back to yourself and looking at yourself and having that confidence that you do fit in and you do belong no matter where you are.
Yeah, I'll just want to piggyback a fantastic question. I appreciate that you asked that. There's something called imposter syndrome, and I'll be very clear on this. I've done this for 15 years in my field. It is everywhere and everyone has it. So if you feel like you don't fit in, everyone feels that way. So don't worry about that. It takes time to overcome. As Steph said, she found a way, but every single person experiences imposter syndrome. It's part of human nature. It's part of life. So when you're feeling that, just, find your thing, find the things that you know you're good at, stick to those, and you'll find your way in that environment, no doubt. So just for everyone in the back, the question was, what was the feeling Steph had when we scored or our team scored the game-winning, gold medal-winning penalty shot.
Oof. I don't know if I can like put that fully into words. I will say one of the first emotions that came to mind for me specifically was relief. For a lot of different reasons. Throughout the Tokyo Olympics, I had quite the personal journey. Leading up into the Olympics, I had no idea if I was going to be the starting goalkeeper or not. I had played every game leading in, but then a couple weeks before the Olympics, I was told, we don't know if you're going to be the starter. And so I kind of had this like huge mental breakdown before. And then I ended up like getting myself over, working hard and like really proving. So I got the starting job, and then in the very first game, I got a pretty major injury where I had to get taken out of the game. Then I missed the second game, and then I got myself back in. And then we played Brazil in the quarterfinal. It went to penalty shootout. I made 2 saves to win that penalty shootout. And then I had this like rush of adrenaline. And from that moment, I never really came down from that adrenaline high. So for the rest of the Olympics, I was having panic attacks, anxiety attacks. I wasn't able to go to the meal hall to eat with any of the athletes. I was just like laying in a dark room trying to control my anxiety and trying to just keep myself able to literally just function. And so when that final whistle blew and we won that gold medal game, for me, like firstly, it was just this relief of like, okay, I can let go of the anxiety, the height of the Olympics, like everything that was going into this. So I felt this kind of like, oh, it's over. But then like quickly, obviously there's like a big team like scrum and everybody's excited and you're jumping on each other. And so I think that moment was then what brought that elation and that joy and just that feeling of like, we've been talking about winning this gold medal, but did we actually just do it? And so it was just that feeling of like, holy crap, we actually just did this. And so it was just this like euphoric feeling.
How do you like deal with like anxiety before like during like stressful games, not like let it affect like performance?
So the question is, how do you deal with anxiety within games so it doesn't impact performance?
I think for me, I built up a lot of tools throughout my career, and I kind of touched on it before with meditation. And so one thing that I did before every single game, it became a habit for me, was when I was in the locker room before the game, while the music is bumping, some players are dancing, some are singing, there's a lot of craziness going on. I would take a minute and I would just sit in my locker kind of in the middle of all of the chaos, and I would just close my eyes and breathe. And I would do that for about a minute, and if I could bring my heart rate down and just like focus on my breathing, that was my way of being calm in a very chaotic environment. And so I knew that if I could do that in the locker room with people jumping around and singing and dancing, if I knew that I could be calm in that moment, it didn't matter what was going to happen on the field, I would be able to be calm in whatever chaos was going to come. And so that was one of the main things, was being able to just control my breathing. Secondly, I think it was just all about like being confident and knowing that I had prepared myself for whatever is to come. As I said before, like nothing is going to happen in that game that I haven't seen before, I haven't experienced before, and everything that would come my way was either going to be a success or it was going to be a growth. And so always being able to see that if I made a mistake, I'm going to learn from this and I'm going to get better. And so I think just having that confidence from within myself that mistakes are going to happen, that's okay, we're going to learn and we're going to grow.
Essential shirt up there. What can I do if I think a friend is struggling with mental health?
I think ask is the first thing. We do say that a lot in the sort of coaching space. It's just like, you got to ask. If you don't ask, you don't know. And then, be prepared to ask again, because sometimes people don't want to say out loud and name that thing right away. But if you're always willing to check in and just keep coming back to that, people will open up to you. You'd be surprised.
I think one thing with that too is I think vulnerability breeds vulnerability. And so I think if you can show that you can be vulnerable, it'll encourage someone else to be vulnerable as well. And so I think with that, like asking, and I think being okay to share maybe something that you're struggling with, I think that will encourage someone else to open up as well.
Yeah, I would just add, keep them talking if they're talking, right? Like if they're saying, they might be saying the thing like this is bothering me, but if they're talking, just keep them talking. Ask a little bit more about that. Don't try to. Sometimes our nature is like, oh, it's gonna be fine, man. It's gonna be cool. You're good. That's not what they need to hear. Like, oh, tell me a little bit more. Like, just kind of keep the dialogue going, and yeah, as Kevin mentioned, they'll talk eventually. Can you say it again, sorry? What does failure mean to you? Stumper.
Yeah, good question. I don't know, a failure for me is like an opportunity to learn is kind of the way I like to look at all the ways that I've failed in my career. I definitely failed at a few things or had little stumbling blocks along the way, but it's always like, well, I can't fix that now, so like let's move on. But when I have this come up again, I can now do this differently. And that sort of opportunity to learn is, and like that growth mindset is really what I try to bring to everything I do. It can be hard for sure. Yeah.
I think for me, like something I have always believed in is I am exactly where I'm supposed to be doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. And so if the outside belief is around this thing of failure, like for me, I'm supposed to be doing that right now. Like that's where I'm meant to be. And so if it is a failure, well, I'm meant to go through this right now because it's going to help me grow to be an even stronger, more resilient person. And so I think it's just like, for me, it's always that thought of, I'm gonna grow and learn from this, but like, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be, and this just isn't my time for this right now. And my time will come, but like, I'm supposed to be going through this right now because it's going to teach me something. If I've had a game where my head's not in it, how do you get it back? Mm-hmm.
Within the game or the next game?
I'm trying to think of like which example, because that's for sure happened a few times. I think it's, I don't know if I can think of like a specific one. It's definitely happened like many times in my career where I just went into a game a little bit sluggish, or, I made a mistake early on in the game, which kind of like knocked me off because then I was only thinking about that mistake. I think earlier in my career that was a lot harder, but for me, like something I just learned was like always coming back for me to the present moment. Like, what is the smallest thing that I can focus on to get myself back here? So anytime I was focusing on a mistake I made, or like, oh, I'm not feeling great today, or, I just don't feel sharp, I'm not really in the present moment because I'm thinking about all these other things. So the more that I can come back to, like in soccer, the most simple thing was just make your next pass. That's all you have to focus on. The next time you get the ball, just make your pass. Oh, I made a bad pass. Okay, next time I get it, I'm just going to make my next pass. I think that can translate to a lot of sports. It's just like, what is the next thing that you can control, that you can focus on, and just having your mind focus on that one thing. I think that can really get you out of kind of the thoughts of everything else going around and just come back to what you really can focus on.
Maybe one more if there's another one out there. No? Okay. Thanks for your eyes and ears today, guys. That was awesome. I hope it was informative.